This is Groove from the Groove Broadcasting Network, taking you back down memory lane from some of the shows that we've done in the past, featuring some of the local talent here in Rhode Island. This particular show, we're featuring Rhode Island Music Hall of Fame, Doowop legendary performers, the Castaleers. Johnny, have you heard of the Castaleers going back? They were performers here in like the 1950s doing the old corner singing doo-wop style. They're enshrined in the Rhode Island Music Hall of Fame.
Wow, man, I'm not particularly familiar with them, but I've heard a lot of great singers and great group from the 80s to now coming from
Rhode Island, yeah, absolutely. And the people that don't know, the deal is you'll have a chance to watch this particular show and get a chance to meet Mr. George Smith Jr. and Dell Padget of the Castaleers. Sit back and relax and then take the ride and understand the history of the music here in Rhode Island on The Groove. Good day and welcome to The Groove. I am your host, The Groove, with a brand new show in Rhode Island. Today discussing music in the Rhode Island landscape. Today in the studio we have two of the three original members of the Doowop royalty known as the Castaleers, recently inducted into the Rhode Island Music Hall of Fame. Today we'd like to introduce to you Mr. Dell Padget, Mr. George T. Smith Jr. Gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the studio.
Thank you for inviting us.
Congratulations on your induction into the Rhode Island Music Hall of Fame. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Castaleers and how the Castaleers first evolved? I know that you guys got together back in about 1952, but why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, first thing I'd like to say, the Castaleers are made up of a multitude of different people who played in other groups. And the last group I'll bring up to date would be the Parakeets.
Okay.
So the members of the Parakeets, and I think Dell was in the Parakeets before I was, and he can expound on that.
Good. Dell, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Parakeets and how the Parakeets started off?
It started out, I used to hang around with James Washburn, known as Sonny Washburn, who later went with the Nutmegs, who had Story Untold out. And then I met Richard Jones, Herman Bergerson, and when I came to Rhode Island, I used to live on Church Street, and I used to see Benny Barrels.
Okay.
And I met Benny and the other guys, and then we got together as a group.
Oh, and so you guys just kind of evolved from different portions of Providence, Rhode Island, from like the south side, the west end,
Yes,
and the east
yes,
side.
yes.
You guys got together and started singing what's known today as the doo-wop harmony in music.
You know, like most groups, you know, we sing on the streets and, you know, sure, but my musical background's a little different from George, because I used to sing in church.
Sure.
You know.
Gospel is part of the foundation of
Yeah.
R&B and soul music. Sure, so that makes perfectly good sense. So who were the original members in the Castaleers before you guys went on to go on and do your recordings in 58 and 59?
Well, the Castaleers were myself, Benny Barrels. We were the co-founders, and I use the word co-founder only because we were just reorganizing the Parakeets or some other groups. And Dell Padget was part of it, Richard Lucas was part of it, and Ronald Henrys.
Okay.
And those were the five guys.
Excuse me, Richard who? Jones?
Richard Jones,
Richard
yes.
Jones, right. Okay.
Sorry about that.
And then later on, the personnel changed. Joe Hill became part of the group.
Oh yeah, we know about the infamous Joe Hill. Yes,
he
sir.
wrote a couple of the songs. But I think the main thing is that I always told Muffet's Music Store, if I put a group together, would you listen to them and see if you like them?
Right.
Because Muffet's Music was the ones responsible for us making all those recordings.
Yeah, Muffet's music was an icon in the Rhode Island
Yeah.
area, right down there on it was on Wade Boston Street, in
Empire.
downtown Providence?
Empire Street.
Empire Street, right. There were two brothers that ran Muffet's music.
Yep, two brothers. And so our journey started with them as the Castaleers.
Okay.
And then we continued to rehearse. They had a studio for us on Empire Street.
Okay.
And, then we proceeded to go out and do the recordings. And Dell can tell you where we recorded at, because his history is pretty good on that.
Sure. Del, can you fill us in on when you guys first started doing your recordings? I understand, I guess your first recordings were done in the early to mid 50s, but the stuff that you recorded that went on to the national level was done right around 1958 or so.
Yeah, we recorded in Ace Studios, and it was a little small place in Boston. And I can't tell you the musician's name of that particular studio. It was a little small place right off of Boston Street, and that was our first recording. And then we went to New York to record the other records at the Legal Studios, and we record our records there. We had Sam the Man Taylor, who had Holland Natron out at the time.
Okay.
Bert Keys was the keyboards in the studio band. He was also the vocal coach for the Crest, and we went on from there. The studio was very popular with popular musicians such as Patti Page, who did the dog in the window,
Okay.
and so on. She also recorded Old Cake Pot at Ace Studio as well.
Wow, that's going back. So, what was the actual first single that was released in your collaboration with the Muffets under the title "The Castaleers"?
Comeback was the very first single, and
Comeback.
I'm quite sure it was Hi-Fi Baby on
High
the
Five
other
was
side.
at the opposite
Hi-Fi
side.
Baby, yeah, I
that
remember
was the
hearing
flip
that.
side. And to put them in the right chronological order is kind of hard now, because we've been away from for quite a while.
But but you guys actually, when you went in, you didn't record just one song at a time. When you went into the studio, you recorded a handful of songs at that particular time, didn't you?
Up in Boston, we did two. When we went to New York, we did the remainder. I think we went there twice, though, didn't we?
I think so.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
I
think
think
so.
so.
That's great.
But I was very impressed, because when I'm being from Providence and not seeing a building over 6 stories high, when we went to New York, the recording studio was 6 floors down in the ground.
Wow.
And that was fascinating to me,
Sure. Well, you guys were one of the few groups in Rhode Island that ever actually recorded. I mean, there were only a handful of groups from
Yeah.
what I recall and what I understand. I mean, back in that era, that were out recording. I mean, they were like Chubby and the Turnpikes and a couple of other groups. So you guys were actual pioneers on the music scene, doing the doo-wop music with the with the multi harmony and 5-member singing group. That's quite astonishing, quite interesting.
And we also sang on Boston Ballroom up in Boston, and it was a show like the Alan Freed Show, but it was a local show. And I think Neil Sedaka was on that show with us. Am I right?
Yeah. And also 2 of the members of the Andrews Sisters at that time. One of them had passed.
Right.
Yeah.
Then we went on to a place in Springfield. Tim Hope was the disc jockey there. I don't remember the other disc jockey in Connecticut. And then we also had a place similar in Rhode Island when Channel 12 was on the Chain Street.
Okay.
And we got a lot of puppets there. There was Shirley Ellis and the Shirelles and a few other groups.
Yeah, it was kind of tough back in that area. I mean, back in that era, trying to get airplay. I mean, one of the things, especially in the Rhode Island market, I mean, we've never really had rhythm and blues soul station that was dedicated to the doo-wop harmony or the self-contained band music and things in that area. So it must have been real tough for you guys to actually get your music played around.
I
in the
think
area.
who used to play us and like us was Chuck Stevens.
Okay.
Carl Henry was before us.
Now, Carl Henry, going back there, Carl Henry was the owner of Carl's Diggins over on North Main Street in Providence, correct?
First he started out on Randall Street.
Yeah.
Oh, Randall Street down
Right
Randall
next
Street,
to the
isn't-
Celebrity Club.
Wasn't that right?
Yeah,
right. That's what I was getting ready to say. The area of
right
the old
next to-
Celebrity Club, where Charles Gate Apartments and Nursing Home currently
Yeah,
resides.
as
that's going-
most people have made, excuse me for butting over you, but for most people don't know, the Celebrity Club was the top 10 club in the country.
That's what I understand. That's what I understand.
And
from,
I
you know,
saw an
some of my
awful lot
family
of people
history.
there.
Right.
I
Right.
wasn't even old enough to be in a club, but they allowed me in there anyway.
Hey, that's how we learn. That's how we learn. So, were there other clubs in the Providence, Rhode Island area that you guys, as the Castaleers, were able to perform in?
We sang at the Downbeat, that would be on Westminster Street, but that was owned by the
One of the
Philippines again, so that was Paul Philippi owned Celebrity Club, but his brother Ray owned the Downbeat.
Okay.
We sang at the Narragansett Room down in Fall River,
Uh-huh.
and there was a couple of clubs in Fall River we sang at.
I think it was the West End,
Huh?
the Westport End.
Probably so. And
It's running right off of 74.
Muffet being our manager, they booked us in shows with Eddie Zach.
Okay.
Yeah, at the B&B nightclub, we sang with the strippers. So the point of it is our exposure was weird because the managers weren't really rhythm and blues people.
Right.
So they booked us in clubs they played in, you know.
Right. Well, anywhere to kind of get exposure. I mean, it's not a lot different than today's landscape, where it's really tough in the R&B market out here for for bands and things like that to be able to perform because it's such a shortage of black-owned businesses in the Providence landscape area.
And we also sang at Brown University. And one of the favorite, we had a special attraction. Dell could hypnotize.
Okay.
So we would go in and Dell would do his hypnotist act. Have people put flames under their hand and make them get stiff as boards. Probably you remember that, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
So he was good at that, you know, but that was like an added attraction to the Castaleers, you know?
Well, you had to have, anything that you have to kind of make the show a lot more interesting to go along with the music that was being performed, because the music you guys were performing in that era was music that is just legendary and goes back.
Yeah.
What I think we're going to do at this time is that we're going to take a moment and we're going to listen to some of the original recordings of the Castaleers.
Bullfighting, baby, you're always fighting me. My bullfighting, baby, you're always fighting me. You're aiming at my lonely heart, won't you stop and let it be? Well, now my bullfighting, baby, I wanna start to go. My bullfighting, baby, I wanna start to go. If you won't let me love you, you won't fight me anymore. Baby, don't you want me? Baby, don't you care? Baby, don't you want me? Baby, don't you care? Open up the store and hot all your love I want to share. Oh, come my bullfighting, baby, just look me in the eye. My bullfighting, baby, just look me in the eye. And tell me that you love me, so we'll never say goodbye. Bullfighting, baby, just look me in the eye. My bullfighting, baby, just look me in the eye. And tell me that you love me, so we'll never say goodbye. So we'll never say goodbye. So we'll never say goodbye. High five. High five. Hi-fi, baby. Hi-fi, baby. Feel a girl with rhythm in its soul. She likes music that's jivey. She likes music that's jumpy. Something solid and groovy.
Hottest chick in town.
My hi-fi, baby. My hi-fi, baby. My hi-fi, baby. Feel a girl with rhythm in its soul. Roll your socks and rock that thing. Like your jeans, lift it up and swing. The house in the middle and the sheets in the corner. The house being shaken to the break of dawn. Hi-fi, baby. Hi-fi, baby. Hi-fi, baby. Feel a girl with rhythm in its soul. Rhythm in its soul. Rhythm in its soul. Rhythm in its soul.
Welcome back. You were just listening to Hi-Fi Baby by the Castaleers. So, Mr. George, the name, the Castaleers. Can you tell us how you guys came up with the name, the Castaleers? It's a real nice, classy, regal name. Can you explain that to me?
Well, we went through many names. We're coming off the Parakeets. And then when we reorganized, we had to think of a name. And we were in Ronnie Henry's house. And I came up with the name Castaleers. So when I tried to look it up in a dictionary, Castaleers, keepers of the castle, it has a Spanish flavor to it, and yet
Like
it's
that.
catchy. So the
I like that.
Castaleers
Keepers of the castle.
and all the members of the group agreed to the Castaleers.
That's nice and regal. I
All
like
right.
that. Keepers of the castle.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah, that's how, and the guys accepted it, and we moved on.
So that name kind of set you guys apart from some of the other different groups that were around. Who were some of the other groups that were like performing like in the Providence, Rhode Island area when you guys were doing your thing as performing here in Providence as the Castaleers?
I would say the Vidells,
Okay.
which was another group that recorded also.
All right.
When we played in Fall River, Chubby and the Turnpikes
Which
later became
the Tavares, right?
Tavares, yeah. They
Okay,
were at one club,
okay.
we were at another.
Right.
And the main thing of it is there was a person that did put groups together, and it was Benny Woods.
I remember the name Benny Woods.
Yeah, so
as a young
Benny
guy.
Woods, I don't know the members of his group, the Hearts.
The Benny Wood group consists of Joe Hill,
Okay.
Danny Jett,
Okay.
Sonny Washburn, and he calls himself Jose Santos, Joseph Santos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sonny, like I told you before, went with the Nutmegs in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
And Sonny passed some years back at the age of 72.
Okay. And so Joe Hill, before he came to join the Castaleers, was originally with Benny Woods' group
He's the
then.
group called the Hearts.
Okay,
He was
right,
the lead
right.
singer.
Now I understood Joe Hill also did a little bit of writing with you guys as well. Who you guys were doing a little bit of writing? I know some of the music you had explained, Mr. George,
Yeah,
that you collaborated with the Muffets there at Muffets
Yes,
Music Store.
in those days, anything you wrote, your managers would
Change
tag in on it because
Okay.
that's where the money was.
Sure.
Apparently, that we didn't know. We were green.
Right.
So
right.
the point of it is, Richard Jones wrote quite a few tunes. He wrote "Come Back."
Okay.
He wrote "Lonely Boy."
All right.
Did I make a mistake on that?
Yeah, he didn't write Comeback. Muffet wrote
Okay.
Comeback.
Okay.
He
But he-
did write Lonely Boy.
And
Lonely
another
Boy.
tune.
And there's a history behind that also.
Yeah.
Sure. What was the title of the song that Joe Hill wrote?
My Baby's All Right.
My Baby's All Right.
And he wrote two.
I cried.
And I cried. And those two were very good. They were just underexposed.
Well, yeah, back in that day, from what I understand, I mean, again, with the lack of
Exposure.
R&B stations in this particular market, it had to be real tough. And back in that day, I understand that they had going on what they called payola, you know, where there was the behind the scenes stuff going on, where they were buying airtime for certain groups. Well, you guys did get some exposure with the recordings that you did. Did you have a chance to do any traveling out of the New England area?
Yes,
Yeah, we
we had a chance to go to Canada.
Okay.
That was Shaw Agency who direct was us at the time. Shaw Agency today is General Corporation.
Okay.
They still, you know, they handle like Ray Charles, Ruth Brown, Clyde McFadden. So
Okay.
we were in some good company. believe
Sure.
it or not.
Yeah.
Sure. I
You know,
recognize
but,
those names.
Yeah, but unfortunately we were green. We didn't want to leave our families, and so we didn't go to Montreal.
Yeah. Well.
And we were booked for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I remember even in the 70s and the early 80s that was a popular route to go. That there was a lot of groups out of the New England area that were going up into the Canada market and having the chance to perform and achieve some success. So with all of that, I mean, wow, you guys, I mean, just regal pioneers of the old doo-wop era here in Rhode Island. It's been very informative and very, very, very much a pleasure sitting here talking to you. So what are you gentlemen doing nowadays?
Well, I'm going to speak for Benny first. Benny is an artist. He's a member of the Providence Art Club.
Okay.
And he's not here with us today, but he's still, you know, he's part of the Castaleers
Sure.
presently. And I'll let Dell tell what he's doing.
I've been involved with the local art community here. I belong to several art groups.
Okay.
I do a little photography and abstract paintings.
Sure. Okay. Dell, can you tell me? I know that with the technology today that we have out here, that the music of the Castaleers, it still lives out there. Can you tell people where they can go if they want to listen to some of the additional music that, other than what we're playing here on our show, where they can go and pull up and listen to some of the music of the Castaleers?
All they have to do is type in just the name the Castaleers and it will come up. And if you type in where it says blog, it'll give you several other sites to go to.
So if you just go into Google and type in Castaleers, it'll pull forward some of the history and some of the recordings, and people can go to YouTube and pull up some of those great old recordings that you guys were performing back in the late 50s.
The only thing about YouTube is that they can't sample the music because of somebody been complaining about copyright laws of sampling music. So
But,
that's
well, they can certainly go and just listen to it anyway for their own listening pleasure, for sure.
they can go to other sites that will allow you to listen and even download.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. Gentlemen, it's been such a pleasure having you here. Thank you for sharing your story with us about the Castaleers. And again, congratulations on your induction into the Rhode Island Music Hall of Fame. What we're going to do right now is we're going to listen to some more music of the Castaleers. And thank you very much for coming in.
And I'd like to thank you two
Thank
for
you.
letting us be part of your programming.
It is an absolute honor, gentlemen. Thank you.